Military Medal Episode 6 The Battle of Kambula, March 29, 1879. From the ashes of Hlobane, the British strike back.
Prologue. The fire of revenge still burns.
March 29, 1879. Across the dry highlands of Kambula, the wind howled through scorched grass. The distant sound of hooves echoed faintly through the smoky haze. Only a day earlier, March 28, the British had suffered a terrible shock at Hlobane, where hundreds of mounted men were surrounded and slaughtered among the rocks and thunder. The news spread like wildfire through Zululand, bringing fear and despair to every British outpost. But at Kambula, a small wooden fort in the wilderness, Colonel Evelyn Wood refused to retreat. He gripped his sword tighter and gave the order, rebuild the barricades, prepare the guns, and ready every man. The storm of vengeance was coming, and this time, the British would not run.
Background. After a string of humiliating defeats.
Since the disastrous loss at Isandlwana that January, the British army had been reeling. Thousands of men were dead. Though the defense at Rorke's Drift had restored some pride, the following months brought only blood and frustration, in Yazane, Esho, Hlobane. The fields of Zululand were soaked in red. The mighty British Empire had been humbled by bare-chested warriors carrying ox-hide shields and short-stabbing spears called Ikalwa. For Colonel Evelyn Wood, commander of the Western Column, the defeat at Hlobane was a wound to the soul. Nearly 400 British and African auxiliaries had fallen due to a single tactical mistake. Now, vengeance was marching toward him. Over 20,000 Zulu warriors under the generals Nsingweyo and Nyamana, sent by King Setshwayo himself to finish what Hlobane had begun.
Preparing for the final stand.
The British camp at Kambula stood atop a ridge. Wood had turned it into a fortress. Wagons and timber formed a laager fence, cannons were placed on the hill, and nearby cattle kraals were fortified as secondary defences. Inside were about 2,000 men, including the 13th and 90th regiments, and several mounted units. They all knew the Zulu would come. And this time, no one would flee. Wood arranged his men in 3 defensive lines. The outer ring, artillery and riflemen. The middle line, entrenched infantry. The inner reserve, ready to counterattack when the moment came. That morning, a pale mist still hung over the hills. Then, from afar, clouds of dust began to rise. The Zulu army was on the move. War drums thundered across the valley. The chilling cries of Usathu, Usathu shook the earth. From his position on the hill, Colonel Wood watched silently. He knew the decisive battle had come.
The battle begins, the Zulu dance of death.
Around 1 p.m., the Zulu vanguard appeared over the southern ridge. As always, they formed their famous bull's horns formation, a brilliant yet deadly tactic. The chest attacked frontally. The horns swept around the flanks. The loins, reserves, waited behind. Then, thunder split the sky. British artillery opened fire. Shells exploded among the advancing ranks, tearing men apart in clouds of dust and blood. But the Zulu kept coming, thousands of warriors charging forward in a black tide. Shields raised, spears glinting in the sun. The British riflemen unleashed a storm of bullets. The Martini Henry rifles cracked in deadly rhythm, each shot finding its mark. Hundreds fell, but still they came, fearless, unstoppable, almost supernatural in their courage. They reached the barricades, clawing and thrusting through gaps in the wagons, trying to tear down the British lines. Smoke and dust swallowed the battlefield. The air stank of gunpowder and death.
Turning the tide, the bloody counterattack.
By 3 p.m., the Zulu left flank, under General Nyamana, began to falter under relentless fire. That was the moment Colonel Wood had been waiting for. He turned to one of his most daring officers, Major Redvers Buller, and gave a single order. Ride, and break them. Buller spurred his horse forward. The British cavalry surged out of the fort like thunder, swords flashing in the sunlight. They tore through the collapsing Zulu lines, cutting down warriors as they fled, pursuing them across the rolling hills for miles. Seeing the left wing disintegrate, the Zulu right flank began to waver too. Only the central force, the chest, kept up the fight, hurling themselves again and again against the British fort. But by now, the British guns spoke with merciless precision. Shell after shell burst within the charging ranks. Martini Henry fire rained down without pause. The Zulu formations crumbled. The ground of Kambula shook beneath the roar of cannon and the cries of dying men.
Collapse of the Zulu army.
By 5 p.m., it was over. The battlefield was a sea of bodies. Over 2,000 Zulu warriors lay dead. Hundreds more were wounded or scattered into the hills. The British lost only 29 men, with about 50 wounded, a staggering ratio, 1 British life for every 100 Zulus. It was a triumph, and a tragedy. A victory written not only in courage, but in the horror of slaughter. As darkness fell, the survivors fled into the plains. The British pursuit continued until night. Then, silence. Only the wind remained, whispering through the broken shields and fallen spears of Kambula. For the first time since the war began, the British had won a complete victory on open ground.
Aftermath, the turning point of the war.
The Battle of Kambula did more than avenge Hlobane. It broke the Zulu momentum entirely. Their confidence shattered, their armies decimated. From that moment on, the British regained control of the war. It was the turning point, the moment the tide of the Anglo-Zulu conflict began to reverse. Historians would later call it Isandlwana in reverse. At Isandlwana, arrogance had led to ruin. At Kambula, discipline, firepower, and sheer will restored British honor. If Isandlwana was a symbol of humiliation, then Kambula became the symbol of rebirth, the moment the empire rose again from its own ashes.
Epilogue, the smoke still rises.
As dusk fell, Colonel Evelyn Wood stood atop the hill, gazing over the field below. Thousands of Zulu bodies lay strewn across the grass. Shattered shields, broken spears, fires still smoldered among the dead. The wind carried the scent of smoke and blood. Wood said nothing for a long while. Then softly, he murmured, "This is no victory, only what was necessary to end the killing." But history would remember this day, March 29th, 1879, as the day the British rose from defeat, and the war itself changed forever.
Closing message for viewers.
The Battle of Kambula, the British counterattack born from humiliation, marked the turning point of the Anglo-Zulu War. From this moment onward, the Zulu would never again launch a major offensive. Yet before the sun fully sets on Zululand, one last epic chapter remains. The final stand of a king defending his nation's soul. Crossed swords, stay tuned for episode 7. The Battle of Ulundi, 1879, the Zulus' last stand.